statistical, mathematical fact
never has been down.
has broken every single record. There is no asset that has come close.
It's the only thing in the industry that was not touched, that was not hacked, and it never fails doing what it promised in 2009. It's never
What's
failed.
the best performing asset the world has ever seen? And you'll find out that it's Bitcoin.
Good evening. Well, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome. Welcome, Bitcoiners. Welcome, traders. Welcome, followers. Welcome, supporters. Welcome, haters. Welcome, Bitcoin negators. Welcome to all of you. Welcome to another live space with Oliver Velez. Of course, my name is Oliver Velez. And what am I trying to do? I'm trying to, along with me as well, heighten your level of awareness, heighten your level of market sophistication as it relates to Bitcoin, the rarest, the most unique asset, the rarest, the most unique money, the rarest, most unique commodity, pure monetary good human beings have ever had access to. That's what we're trying to do here. Nothing more, nothing less. Come on in, make yourselves comfortable, grab the beverage of your choice, maybe even grab something to take notes with if that's what floats your boat. I want you to understand that my live talks are somewhat unique in that I do not pass the mic. This is not a show of any kind. I find that the best manner in which I can share my limited information and knowledge about Bitcoin is through a monologue format, or what some might refer to as a rant format. And so your requests for the mic will go for naught. I also want you to be aware of the fact that each and every one of my live talks do wind up in part and in whole on my Bitcoin podcast called Bitcoin Unleashed. If you find anything that I have today of interest, that I have to say today of interest, of value, I'd strongly encourage that you seek out Bitcoin Unleashed on the podcasting platform of your choice, and find that podcast, subscribe to it. I will continue to contribute to that podcast by sharing my thoughts, ideas, and concepts regarding Bitcoin, what it is, why it's here, in my opinion, and where we're going and where it's taking us into the future. I hope you guys are all doing well as of this moment. Right now, Japan spot Bitcoin ETFs are live. That's right. I did not get an opportunity to verify how many, but at last check, there were 22 Japanese spot Bitcoin ETFs slated to go live. Don't quote me on that number. That is the last number that I had privy to. And whatever the case, whatever the number is, this is not some small event, guys. I'm sorry, not Japan. It's the Hong Kong ETFs. Please correct that, scratch that. Not Japan, but Hong Kong spot Bitcoin ETFs are live. And at last check, this number could be very different from this moment. There were 22 slated or seeking approval to go live. Whatever that number is, those Hong Kong ETFs should be trading live as we speak here today. They are actually anticipated to outpace or beat the US's first day of inflows by a factor of 2. So if I'm not mistaken, something like 156 million, 158 million thereabouts of inflows came into the spot Bitcoin ETFs. That was unprecedented. That was a big surprise in the United States. And I'm sure it was a surprise throughout the world, which had an influence on Hong Kong joining the bandwagon via game theory. And the Hong Kong ETFs are anticipated by analysts there to outpace or beat the US's first day of inflows by a factor of 2. And if my memory serves me correctly, it was something like 156 million or 158 million of net inflows on the first day, January, early January 10th or so of this year, that the spot Bitcoin ETFs in the US went live. So that is not a small number, guys, especially when we factor in Bitcoin's multiple, which does bounce around depending upon where Bitcoin is in its cycle. But in sometime in 2021, the Bank of America did a study to determine what Bitcoin's multiple was, and based on their study, at that time, Bitcoin had a multiple of 118, which is basically meant to be interpreted as every $1 of net inflow that goes into Bitcoin produces $118 of network value. There is not a one-to-one effect here. I did what I consider to be somewhat of a thorough talk on that network effect, or that multiple effect, of how one single purchase can have an effect on an entire network. And I believe that at the time I did this talk to explain this multiplier effect, I used real estate as an example to explain how you might have a neighborhood of 21 different homes, a closed, gated community of 21 million homes, each home on average valued basically the same at $500,000 per home. And one sale of one of those 21 homes at $600,000 would have an effect on all of the 21 homes, raising all of the value of the 21 homes in that gated community to about 600,000. Since gated community homes, and some gated community homes, they're primarily the same. And one purchase, or $100,000 extra for one home, would increase the value of all the other 20 homes in that gated community about 100,000. So that's not a 1-to-1 ratio. Okay. The same applies to many other assets, and certainly Bitcoin is no exception. And the Bank of America did a study in 2021 that revealed that Bitcoin's multiplier at that time was approximately 118. So $1 of net inflows into Bitcoin raises the network's value $118. So that's very significant. Now, this multiplier effect can move around quite a bit. Sometimes it's 50, sometimes it's 70, sometimes it's 118, sometimes it's 200. It does depend on where we are in Bitcoin cycle, but just know that $1 going into Bitcoin does have a material effect overall. Now, another thing that I spoke about in one of my talks was, give me a second here, guys, that the effect of these events, the effect of these inflows, the effect of things like the halving and things of that nature, they are not immediate. Nothing is immediate in the financial world. And I feel that a lot of people who aren't, terribly sophisticated regarding financial matters, they expect these things to have an initial impact, and they usually don't. there is a 6 to 9 month delay effect as it relates to Bitcoin, and some assets is actually even longer than that, as much as 12 to 18 months. But Bitcoin seems to have this 6 to 9 month delay in the event occurring and you starting to see the material impact from that event. And so I did a talk, I believe, on January 22nd. And I did several talks prior to that, but the latest one was on January 22nd, where I delved into this 6 to 9 month effect. And I told everyone who was listening, or everyone who listened, that to not truly expect fireworks after the spot Bitcoin ETF approval in the United States, and not to expect an immediate impact from the fourth Bitcoin halving, which just took place about 11 days ago, that would take about 6 to 9 months to really see the true effect of that. And this all puts us around late this year, or more specifically, right around the United States presidential election time. If history's any guide, this is when the effect of the halving tends to really take hold. And we have something extra this year. In addition to the halving, we have the United States spot Bitcoin ETF approvals and the net inflows that have come into that as a result of that. And now we have, of course, the Hong Kong spot Bitcoin ETFs, which have gone live just as of a few minutes ago. Now, what's interesting about the Hong Kong ETFs is that they are not cash. They are not. They are in kind spot Bitcoin ETFs, as opposed to the United States's cash create ETFs. And this is quite dramatic. So I believe that even though one can expect that the effect of Hong Kong ETFs will be smaller, that's not necessarily true, because their ETFs are in kind in nature. Those ETFs will have a more serious impact on the overall supply of Bitcoin's limited and finite supply, simply because every investor can demand not just cash when they want to exit, but they can demand Bitcoin when they want to exit, which is a form of self-custody, for a form of a way to exit in a manner that gives them full self-custody of the underlying asset itself. And so that's very significant. And I think that we have to give the Hong Kong ETF somewhat of a multiple on top of the US based ETFs. In truth, what you really have with the US based ETFs is that you have a cash product that hitches a ride on Bitcoin's number go up technology, but it does not give you the freedom characteristics, the aspects and the properties of Bitcoin that make it truly special and unique. It just gives you another way to make more cash. And as we know, cash is increasingly becoming trash throughout the world, no matter what piece of land you happen to be born on or live on at this particular moment. So the US based ETFs are basically a promise for more cash, whereas that the Hong Kong ETFs are a promise for either one that you want. You can, of course, cash out of those ETFs with the debased cash of your choice, I believe. But you can also choose to cash out in kind, which is to cash out with Bitcoin itself and start benefiting from the properties and the characteristics that make Bitcoin freedom money, the first of its kind in quite some time. So this is very exciting. It's not something to snuff your nose at. We have, of course, seen Bitcoin pump a bit here. We did surpass or pump back up from below 22,000 to the mid 64,000s. Let me just see where we are right now. I think we've slipped back below 64,000, but at one point we did pump below in anticipation of that. But once again, keep that 6 to 9 month window of time, that 6 to 9 month delay in mind when you think about these events. Okay. Now, what's also interesting is that Australia is next with a bunch of spot Bitcoin ETFs lining up to be launched this year. Game theory is on in full force. That's nothing to shake a stick at either. And it's going to be interesting to see whether or not they take the US's lead with just cash create ETFs, or whether they take Hong Kong's lead with in-kind ETFs, or whether they do a hybrid of some sort. Okay. We also know that the UK is coming as well before the end of the year. They've announced that they are looking into launching spot Bitcoin ETFs, but in their case, they're only going to make them accessible to, I guess, what's commonly referred to as your wealthier investors. They will likely have to have a certain amount of assets, a net. They have to have a certain amount of net worth in order to participate, but still, that is certainly a step forward. And of course, that there are rumors floating around, which I decided that I would contribute to the rumors floating around, that this account called Mr. 100, this account has, since I think since the beginning or the middle of November of last year, has on average bought 100 Bitcoin per day or more every single day up until recent times, and has become one of the wealthiest Bitcoin wallets in existence today. And there have been rumors out that this could potentially be the Bank of Japan. And, seeing what's happening to the Japanese yen going through its current implosion, collapsing against the US dollar in ways that it hasn't done so in decades, they would certainly need it. It would certainly be a good move. Some people took issue with me sharing that rumor, and I really just want people to understand that, Bitcoiners can have some fun too. There are a lot of people out there who have no problem, pontificating, and they have no problem saying what's on their mind, or putting out what may be true or what may not be true. And I'm not quite sure why Bitcoiners should be exempt from being able to do that. I think it's fun. We have the ability to be fun too, and to participate in these speculative ways. And so if that post offended anyone, I'm sorry. But my message to everyone is to lighten up, and, let's have some fun as well. All right. So anyway, I wanted to, it was a travel day for me, but I had some time and I wanted to touch base with you. I haven't, in my recent travels, been able to be in touch with you in a live sense as regularly or as frequently as I have been as of late, and felt it was a great time to sort of open the conversation up for some questions, anything that's on your mind, especially if it's Bitcoin related. I'd love to try to answer. You can ask anything that your heart desires. Nothing is off limits whatsoever. Even if you feel it might be somewhat off-putting to me or offensive, trust me, I've been around the block a few times. I can handle myself. You can ask anything that your heart desires. All right? I can take it. All right. So let's see what's going on. Let's see if anybody has any questions here. Let me see if I can pull them up here. All right. I have something from a Platinum Rift. I think that's his name. Oliver, I am short Bitcoin. All right. I don't know why that would be a choice of yours, but okay. I am short Bitcoin. I'm taking all of your money, he says. Same with your group's money. Thanks, guys. I put a bucket under the waterfall. Keep buying, Oliver. I'll keep shorting it every day. Um, the market, you know, there's this general consensus that short sellers of a desirable asset like Bitcoin are the nemesis. They are evil or they are bad in a way. And Platinum Rift assumes that him telling me that he's shorting Bitcoin will bother me. That doesn't bother me at all. Every market actually needs or should desire short sellers because this is what creates a market. Every buyer needs a seller. And for us to get desirable prices, we need the other side of that transaction. We need people and even not so smart people like plaintiff, like people. I believe plaintiff Riff is not very smart shorting Bitcoin here, but we need those unintelligent people to take the other side of our trades. He's assuming that we are the unintelligent people, but that's what makes a market. Now, short sellers do provide a value to all markets by taking the other side of the bulls. What they also provide is liquidity. Oftentimes, when liquidity might be a lot less, which will create less efficient market dynamics. So they serve a purpose in that regard. Short sellers also are future buyers, and they're future buyers exactly when we need those buyers. So in a very real sense, short sellers are our friends. You can't sell short and not be a buyer. So in a sense, every short seller becomes a bull instantly after his or her short. They're not as bearish as they think they are. This guy thinks that he's bearish on Bitcoin when in fact, he's saying that he's continuing to short, which really is saying that he will continue to be a buyer in the future. We need the buyers in the future. I would love for prices to be more amenable to accumulation now. And if a short seller or a group of short sellers can create that sale on the most valuable commodity, the rarest commodity, and the hardest commodity, money and asset the world has ever seen. If they can help do that, God bless the platinum rifts of the world, because when they have to reverse, whether they reverse at a gain, at some small fiat gain, or some small or big loss in the future, they are future buyers. So they're the wind behind our sails in the future. So, Platinum Riff, what I will tell you is thank you very much. Thank you for being our future buyers. Thank you for being the future fuel behind this 6 to 9 month rocket ship that will take us to unprecedented levels if history's any guide. And I always end those statements with that term, if history's any guide. But I say it somewhat in jest because history is the only guide that we have. It's the only thing that we have to use. So thank you very much for being our buyers, Platinum Riff. I appreciate that. All right, what else? Let me like his comment there. All right, Hoddle Moore is saying that the multiplier effect talk was thoroughly enlightening. I appreciate that, Hoddle Moore. I do expect to put out more of those enlightening talks as the weeks go by. As I've promised, I will greatly reduce or potentially completely eliminate my participation here after Bitcoin hits 100,000. I have to admit to you that I am tiring a bit. I actually wish that that promise, when I made that promise around 16,000 or so in Bitcoin, sometimes I think I should have made that promise at 75,000 Bitcoin or 70,000 Bitcoin. But I will keep my promise and continue to pump out Bitcoin related content until we reach 100,000. My goal has always been to just leave a plethora of electronic footprints, Bitcoin related content that people can refer back to 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Very much like when I started going down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, I felt it was important for me to go back to all of the Bitcoin forums, to go all the way back to the beginning. I wanted to know what everyone said about Bitcoin at every moment throughout its life, at every period, during every halving, throughout every major period of FUD, through every country banning it. I wanted to see what the emotional state that the vast majority of the participants were. I wanted to know, I wanted to see and feel how the narratives changed and morphed from one thing to another. And I believe that I managed to take in virtually every single comment, every single word, every statement ever said about Bitcoin. And I felt it would be a great idea to be one of the contributors to the current era that we find ourselves in now, where people 10 years from now will be looking back on how some of you are scared of getting into Bitcoin at 63,000 because you think you're late, and how that's potentially going to look ridiculous 10 years from now, and how people will listen to this talk in 2028 or 2029 and hear me responding to Platinum Riff's what I consider to be an idiotic move of shorting Bitcoin, and how I responded to his comment. And I felt that would be cool to be a part of Bitcoin history that way, because the prior history was extraordinarily fascinating to me. And it helped to contribute to the conviction that I have today, because I read so many things like Platinum Riff's comment, the disbelief, the idea that Bitcoin would be a failure and go to zero. And I read many things regarding the idea that I'm too late at $6, or I'm too late at $1.40, or I'm too late at 1,000, and things of this nature. So I wanted to at least give a 2-year period to leaving behind some type of history regarding my thoughts, and to also spend a period of time in real time, learning in real time together, making mistakes together, having wrong views, having right views together, and having that be a permanent record in Bitcoin's history and folklore, if you will. So I do plan on doing that until we're at least at 100,000. Some people, when I say that, they mistake that to say, Oliver, are you leaving Bitcoin at 100,000? No, then you haven't been listening to what I've been saying. I don't want anyone to believe that that means that I'm leaving Bitcoin or even selling Bitcoin. I don't believe that Bitcoin should be sold. I don't believe that Bitcoin should be sold for money. Bitcoin is the money. All right. So you don't sell the money, you sell other things for the money. And so, no, that doesn't mean that I'm leaving Bitcoin or selling Bitcoin. Sell it for what? Sell the best performing asset in history to what? The second best? The 17th best? No. Get out of the hardest asset for what? The 50th hardest asset? All right, that just doesn't make sense to me. So no, that doesn't mean that. But thank you very much for that comment anyway. Do I think, Bart was saying, do I really think that Bank of Japan is Mr. 100? Nobody knows. And, but I will tell you this, that I wouldn't be surprised. I also will tell you this, that I've mentioned on a variety of occasions that I believe that the pattern of this type of buying that we saw since November of last year, it smells. It's very reminiscent of a nation state, a medium-sized nation state or so that uh, has just decided to basically go on and, um, you know, somewhat of a buying binge that is not particularly large for them, but not extraordinarily tiny as well. Something significant enough to make a difference, but not something big enough to be a stretch for them. And so I actually believe, and of course we don't know, this is just speculation. And it's fun to speculate. Why not? Um, it's to me, it just seems like it's a nation state of some sort. All right. Um, um, Bart Doherty is also asking Oliver a question. What do you think of Jason Lowry's theses that money is Bitcoin's first use case, but just the first of many? Well, of course, I would suspect, I would hope that everyone who's listening to me, um, I would think that that's to be not even questioned, that Bitcoin has come into our existence through a door called money, but it's not the only door that it will knock on as the most unique technology we've ever been exposed to. But no other, and the reason why I think this should just be a matter of course to think and to understand, because no other technology, no other breakthrough in human intervention has ever just been one thing. I mean, ca- cars driving a human being, the automobile or the combustible engine that started to drive a human being from point A to point B, that wasn't the final, that was the only use case. Fire to cook our meat, to cook our food, and to unlock more nutrients from the food, which actually resulted in human beings at the time extending their average lifespan by unlocking greater amounts of nutrients from their food via fire. That wasn't the only use case, or the only use case wasn't fire warming our bodies. It went on to have myriad use cases after that. Everything has myriad use cases after the first door that the innovation knocks on. And so I think it's silly to think that money is the only use case for the most secure vault the world has ever known. And that's a good way of looking at Bitcoin right now, that it is a vault. It is a place into which you and I can store the fruits of our labor, our time, our energy, our effort, our value, our wealth, and know that no other human being can touch it, debase it, confiscate it, steal it, ruin it, stop it, halt it in any way. And so, what are some other use cases for something that can't be touched by other human beings? Something that we want to safeguard, something that can never be hacked, something that can never die, something that can never go away, something that is outside of the control of every other human being except you. There's countless use cases for something like that. But its first use case is money. And that's the biggest use case that we have today, because it touches the lives of every single human being on earth and all of the other human beings that are waiting to be born yet. So it's not just the human beings that we have on earth today. There are over 200,000 new human beings born every single day. I didn't make that number up. Go look it up yourself. Net of human beings that die and so forth and so on, there's a net positive number of 200 plus human beings added to earth every single day. So Bitcoin has new users in the amount of 200 every single day, in addition to the 8.1 billion on earth today. And this net number will never stop. Never, because it's the sole purpose for Homo sapiens, which is to procreate. It'll never stop. The number will constantly go higher, which makes a finite asset more scarce, more valuable every day of its existence. Think about that, guys. It's a very powerful thought. Wow. Mark is asking, where can we view the new ETF charts? Are they on TradingView? I'm sure they will be. As soon as I'm made aware of them, I will definitely be posting them, Mark. So be on the lookout for that. And if anyone is aware of them before I do that, please feel free to post that. All right. Oliver, your talks keep getting better and better. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yeah, again, as I mentioned, looking to produce more. Okay, what else do we have? Sultana, Oliver, we love you. You are always providing value. Thank you. I appreciate that as well. Thank you. Thank you. Guys, I will tell you that you know, the work the time and effort that goes into trying to like all of your posts, read all of your comments, go through all of your DMs to determine what's of value and what's not, what I should respond to, what's not, which comments I should respond to, grabbing images and links that I feel might be helpful in responding to your comments. That takes a lot more than many of you probably realize. I don't ask you for anything. I just ask you to look. I ask you to investigate. I don't even really truly ask you to buy Bitcoin. I'm just hoping that I can constantly be in front of you about why you need to look at this. Oliver, should the number go up be slow? and Gradual to give it time and affordability, thus facilitating inclusiveness for the latecomers. And I'm hoping that some of this was caught, but I will say that the answer is no. That you want you want a something that is being adopted to be adopted very fast in the beginning, because there is something called the transigent minority that you want the thing to reach. Now, this is a term, if you're not familiar with that term, that I think you should look up. It's called the transigent minority. And this is the point at which there are enough people who've adopted something. There are enough people who believe in something or have something or support something that they haven't become the majority. They're still a minority, but they've reached the transigent minority stage where they're big enough to where their voice can't be ignored. And that you you've got to support them. You can't ignore them. You've got to cater to them. And a very, I would say that a good example of the transigent minority is something having reached transigent minority tipping point is something like kosher food in the Jewish community. So we know that the vast majority of the world doesn't really care about whether a food has kosher standards, but a minority do. And that minority, that voice from that minority is so loud because it's reached the transigent minority tipping point that you can't ignore it, and you might as well cater to it to satisfy those voices. And this is more easily done when the majority, they don't really care whether the transigent minority is being catered to. So if I go to a restaurant, I don't really care if the food is kosher or not. I'm just not part of that community. But if you were to tell me it's kosher, I'd be like, cool. But if it's not, it's okay too for me. But for the transigent minority, no. So why not just many restaurants and places that you go get food, they basically just automatically cater to kosher standards, because why not? It caters to everybody. The majority doesn't care much about it, but we're also satisfying the transigent minority. And so we need Bitcoin. Bitcoin needs to get out there in the hands of enough people to where it has that transigent minority, to the point where the voice is big enough. You've got to cater to them. You can't ignore them. You've got to make sure that voice is okay. And the reason, and I believe that Satoshi Nakamoto, in all of his wisdom, understood this concept, which is why the majority of Bitcoin is front loaded to just get it out there, because an issued Bitcoin or issued Satoshis can't not be unowned, right? So if you get enough of it out there, you get enough of it owned. You understand? And so what's the best way to gain Bitcoin adoption? Number go up. It's not like Bitcoin has a marketing department where it can spend hundreds of millions of dollars like the shit coins do to market themselves. It only has its USD denominated price to market itself. And so 93%, what is it? 93.4% of all Bitcoin is already owned. It had to be front loaded. It had to get out there. It had to become a desirable thing. It had to be something that people wouldn't mind having really fast to get it to approach this transigent minority point. And if that happens too slowly, Your thing can die. Your thing can go away. Your thing can be killed or smothered if it doesn't quickly get in the hands of enough people. Bitcoin today, I don't believe it's reached that transigent minority tipping point yet, but it's getting there. And its number go up is the driving force behind that, in conjunction with its front-loaded issuance schedule, where you had the majority, 93.4% of all the Bitcoin that will ever exist already, it's already owned. 93.4% of all Bitcoin is owned now. Or, yeah, 93, yeah, something like that. Well, you know what I'm saying, 93.75% or something like that. But you get my point. And so, no, you want number go up to be fairly rapid. And it has been. There is nothing in the human experience that has gone up as fast and as powerfully as Bitcoin. And there is nothing that has been adopted faster as a commodity, as a money, as a monetary good, as even a technology. And so Bitcoin is doing its job. It's doing its job by doing what it needs to do faster than every other thing in human history. And so, no, number go up should not be slow. It should not be gradual. It needs to be fast. All right. Cool. What else do we have here? Anything else? I don't see any new ones. I can look back over some of the old ones here. Z is asking, what do you think the suddenly movement will look like for Bitcoin? I think that's a good question. I think what Z Nakamoto is asking is based on, his question is based on the common theme or the common meme in Bitcoin circles, gradually, then suddenly. I think that comes from a Mark Twain writing or novel regarding two characters. One was asking about a bankruptcy. And he said, well, how did the company go bankrupt? And I think the statement in Mark Twain's writing was gradually, then suddenly. Those aren't the exact words, by the way. It morphed into that in the Bitcoin community. But for the most part, gradually, the company went bankrupt gradually first, then suddenly. And the Bitcoin community adopted that. And so Z's asking, what do I think that the suddenly movement will look like if this is the gradual movement? And I think that is a very good question, because despite the fact that Bitcoin is the best performing asset the world has ever known, and is one of, if not the fastest adopted technologies, monies, commodities, monetary goods in the history of human mankind, despite the fact that it has dwarfed almost everything that humans have ever held dear prior to Bitcoin, despite the fact that it's dwarfed everything, this can still be considered the gradual stage. You can't say that it's the suddenly stage in only 0.5 to 0.6%. That's about half of 1% of the world has it. You can't say that at half of 1% adoption, we're at the suddenly stage. It doesn't happen that way. The suddenly stage is more like 12, 15%, and then you explode. And so I would say that the suddenly stage is something that we probably will have a hard time wrapping our minds around. That I don't think it's something that we can truly fathom. I believe that we are in the early stages for the next 10, 15 years. If you think about everything else in the past, when was the suddenly stage for Apple? That didn't happen in the first 15 years of its life or even the first 20 years of its life. When was the suddenly stage for Microsoft? As explosive as that company was, this you might have thought the suddenly stages was in the late 1980s to mid 1990s, but the suddenly stage is now. If you were to look at how anything is adopted, the suddenly stage is the middle. You can't say that half of 1% is anywhere close to the middle of an adoption phase. Suddenly is more in the middle of an adoption phase. And this is so unique in the human experience. I don't think that we can possibly wrap our minds around what the suddenly stage means or what it looks like. But it's something so enormous that I think that right now we can't humanly fathom. That is my view. That's my belief. Think about what Bitcoin has managed to accomplish with just a little drop of adoption, half of 1% adoption. And it's killed everything in history with just a little pinch of adoption. Think of a little pinch of salt, a little pinch of yeast added to unleavened bread, puffing up the whole loaf of bread. A little pinch of global adoption caused Bitcoin to be number one in every conceivable category known to mankind. So if it's done that with half of 1%, where are we at 10%? People can't believe what Bitcoin has done in 15 years with half of 1%. So if they can't believe that, right, do you think it's possible to believe what potentially can happen at 10%, 5%, what, 3%? And the numbers are not linear. So the numbers aren't like, oh, well, Oliver, if we're at 63,000 today, then at half of 1%, then 1% is, 126,000. No, it doesn't work that way. The next half of 1% is exponentially bigger than the first half of 1%. Do you understand? And it's not harder. Like I've heard people say, well, it's going to be harder for Bitcoin to rise in the future because the number is bigger. No, no, that's dumb. I'm sorry, that's dumb. It's not going to get harder with 99.5% rushing in than it was for the first half of 1% rushing in. It's not going to get harder. That's easier. It's just like, I'm sure many of you have heard that your first $1 million is very difficult, but your next 5 million is a lot easier than your first 1 million. You guys have heard that before. It's true. Bitcoin's first 15 years to get to 63,000 from zero. That's the hard part. The easy part is going to be going to 1 million, going to 5 million. It's going to be easier, not harder. And it's going to be faster. It doesn't get slower from here. It gets faster. It doesn't get smaller from here. It gets bigger in an exponential way because we're only at half of 1%. See, I'm always saying this to use a sporting analogy that's akin to you showing up to a professional game and just entering the freaking parking lot. You haven't even found parking yet, much less get out of the car to enter the stadium, to find your seats and wait for the start of the game. You, I would say you haven't even freaking found the parking lot yet at half of 1%. You know? So, these notions that, oh, it's going to be diminishing returns from here. It's just, to me, that doesn't even make sense. How can it be diminishing returns after half of 1%? There's diminishing returns after 70, 75%. Half of 1%? No, there's accelerating returns in front of us, not diminishing. All right, Some Z says, for example, all right, Some Z is asking, Oliver, can you explain what it means to borrow against your Bitcoin? Uh, um, I'm sure I don't have to explain to you what it means to borrow money, right? I believe that. Oh, I see what Sumsy is saying. Can you explain what it means to borrow against your Bitcoin? And then he goes on to say, for example, if you shouldn't sell it, then you borrow against it, but don't you have to pay back? Don't you have to pay the loan back? No, no. So, guys, look, first of all, I believe that Bitcoin is becoming, if it hasn't already achieved the status of being the most pristine asset in the entire world. I want you to understand that collateral runs the world. Collateral runs the world. I'm going to repeat it one more time. Collateral runs the world. And Bitcoin, if it hasn't already achieved it, it is quickly achieving the status of being the most pristine collateral in the entire world. Why? It's the only thing that trades 24 hours a day. It's the most liquid monetary good on planet Earth. It's the only global monetary good on planet Earth. It is known all over the world. It is desirable all over the world. It's the best performing item in global worldwide history. It's the ninth most valuable asset in the history of human life. It's the 13th most valuable currency in the history of the globe, of earthlings, and it's still a baby. Um, the problem with all other assets is that it doesn't share these characteristics. When you post a piece of property as a form of collateral to get loans against, which is what the real estate moguls have been doing for a very long time, posting their property as collateral. The problems you have is that with that is that the property can be damaged. The collateral that the lender um, accepts from the borrower can go up in fire, which exposes the lender, can be stolen, confiscated, tax lien on it, get wrangled in a legal problem, burned down to the ground. The other problem that other forms of collateral like property have is that they're not liquid. You It's not easy to unload a 150 unit building tomorrow. And so the world has had to deal with very imperfect forms of collateral simply because superior forms never existed until Bitcoin. You can't burn Bitcoin to the ground. It is always liquid every single second of human life. You can sell it instantly. You can get out of it. You can buy it instantly. You can get out of it instantly. It can't be stolen. It can't be confiscated. It can always be verified. You always know where it is, who has it. No collateral in the history of earthlings has been this way. And so it is quickly becoming apparent that it is the most pristine form of collateral that we've ever had contact with. And collateral runs the world because borrowed money runs the world. And in order to borrow money, you need collateral. Now, in a faith-based system, a form of collateral is one's word, one's reputation, one's credit score is a form of collateral. This person has a long history of paying his loans back. That is a form of collateral, right? But it requires trust, right? It requires trust. It's not a guarantee. Whereas that Bitcoin doesn't require trust. It's verifiable every second of its existence. There is no question mark or doubt regarding the collateral. And so with this form of collateral, you will, in the future, the way I see it, you will get red carpets rolled out for you wherever you go on planet Earth. If you have Bitcoin, you'll be able to get anything on planet Earth if you have Bitcoin. The same way that if you owned the Empire State Building, you can pretty much post that and get anything you want on planet Earth as collateral, right? But Bitcoin's better than that. You understand? So you're gonna be like the owners of the Empire State Building, right? Or the owners of the the Great Pyramids in Egypt, where it's not going anywhere. It's right there. And if someone defaults on the loan, I get the Great Pyramids of Egypt, one of the wonders of the world. And so with this wonder of the world pristine asset, there's going to be no one or organization or group or bank or entity that won't roll out the red carpet for you, knowing that they can instantly gain ownership should you default on the loan to the rarest asset on planet Earth, the hardest commodity, the hardest money humans have ever had, the most liquid asset in history. It's the most liquid asset in history because it's the only one that trades 24 hours, 7 days a week, that's never down, never been hacked, never had in the last 10 years, never had a glitch, never a hiccup, never anything. Can't be stolen, can't be taken. And so when I say that the spot Bitcoin ETFs are not Bitcoin, this is what I mean. Like, yeah, might be able to some point in the future post your shares of Bitcoin ETF and get some margin on it at some point in the future, maybe. But that's not the same as having the Great Pyramids of Egypt. Your red carpet's going to be way brighter, and your champagne is going to be a different level of champagne at the end of that red carpet. Right this way, Mr. Zoomzy. Your champagne is going to be different from the ETF shares champagne. I'm telling you this. You can't tell me that someone who owns the rarest thing on planet Earth, and after $150,000 of Bitcoin, the most valuable thing on Earth outside of gold, you can't tell me that someone who actually owns the thing isn't considered higher than someone who owns a picture of the thing, a paper version of it. The person who owns the Mona Lisa is different from the person who bought a print copy of it at the local um, gift shop down the street. Can't tell me those two people are the same. It's never going to happen. You need real Bitcoin. All right. And so some Z is saying, well, how is it that I can borrow against it and not pay it back? Well, guys, this is basic. This is basic, right? I mean, what's your real estate moguls done all over the world for hundreds of years? Have they ever paid anything back? No. There are families today that are living off of real estate dynasties, right? That 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 they've never had to work ever. They can't even remember the last relative that had to work. And they're still living off of real estate that's 300 years owned by their great great grandfather, right? Um, and they keep borrowing against the property because the value continues to rise. So here's how it works. You post 1 Bitcoin for a loan, okay, as collateral. And you post it, you get the loan, you buy your yacht or your villa in Italy, whatever you do with it, right? And um, so what you do is, I'll take this in two parts. Once the value of your Bitcoin doubles, you get back half the Bitcoin because the amount of the collateral is now double what you need. So if you needed 500,000, let's say Bitcoin's at 500,000, and you needed $500,000 in collateral to get your $3 million villa, whatever, right? So Bitcoin's now 1 million. Now you can take half a Bitcoin back because you only need 500,000 as collateral. So they release half a Bitcoin back to you. Now it doubles again. Now they've released um you get half of it back again and 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 half of it back again until it's so tiny, the amount of collateral, that you can just let them have the dust if you ever want it to go away, or you can just keep redoing the loan forever. This is how the real estate moguls have always done it, right? And your private equity organizations have always done it this way. And so what if at some point that 1 Bitcoin, what's backing Bitcoin has risen so far in value from its original 1 Bitcoin that now what's this 1/8 of a Bitcoin backing it? And you can just pay that off or let them have it or just keep doing it until it's nothing. So that's one part of it, the rising value. Bitcoin is going to rise forever. Forever. Is there anything else that hasn't kept rising forever? No. It's going to rise in value forever. People say, Oliver, come on, not forever. Forever. Well, what hasn't not risen forever? Has the adoption of fire stopped? No. Electricity? No. Cars? No. Airplane travel? No. Commercial airplane travel started at the beginning of the 1900s. Let's call it 1903, 1904. And we're talking 124 years, more or less, 122, 3 years, something like that, whatever. And still, after 123 years, only 1 in every 4 human beings on Earth have ever been on a plane. Do you know what the potential future growth of air travel still is 120 years in? It's going up forever. You know how many more? There's 200 more human beings that are potential airplane travelers born every year. What about the personal computer? You think that's going to stop going up in usage? There's 200 new human beings every freaking day. There's 200 new internet users born every day, 200 new cell phone users, 200 new electricity adopters, fire adopters every single day, 200,000 new Bitcoiners every day. It's going up forever. And so the collateral you post, that the amount that you need backing your loan will go down forever, all the way to zero. Now, you can choose to pay the interest off with your fiat gains. So you still have some fiat gains coming in, whatever. You can pay the interest and never touch the principal. Let that just keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Pay the interest. Or you can just let them chip away at the Bitcoin. As the Bitcoin goes up in value, you chip off a little extra to pay the interest too. And Bitcoin replaces the value by its number go up technology. And so there's going to be a lot of different ways, guys. What is coming on these layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, layer 5, we're early, remember. It's just going to be astounding. And the people that have it in sufficient amounts, and that ability is disappearing on us, my God, they're going to rule Earth. Do you understand? Not in a bad way, but they're just going to be the creme de la creme of planet Earth in the future. That will never stop. You will never stop having the top of a totem pole. Right? Don't buy into this notion that everybody's going to be equal. That doesn't freaking exist. Equal rights is the utopia, but equality is not. Never. That's not even biological. That's not even scientific. That can't possibly be. There will always be top, middle, bottom. And we are, as Bitcoiners, the future top. I know this with every fiber of my being. I believe this with every fiber of my being. The early adopters of everything that's changed humanity became the top of Earth. It's never failed. And so we're the top. If I'm right, we're the top. I think I'm right. All right. Uh, um, Platinum Rift is the short seller of Bitcoin is back. Okay. Part 2. Oliver, what happens to Bitcoin and all assets when the US dollar becomes stronger? How does any fiat currency become stronger? This has to come from someone who doesn't understand even the basics of how fiat currency works. Plaintiff Riff, you're disappointing me here. No fiat currency can ever be strong. It can only lose value. Bitcoin has no top because fiat currencies have no bottom. Every fiat currency goes to zero. How that's just a mathematical law that is going to go to zero. Every single one. How many currencies are in the currency cemetery compared to the currencies alive today? How many? Countless in the cemetery, right? You don't see any Roman denarius floating around, do you? Oh, any Italian lira? French francs, anyone? Oh, German marks. I used to trade German marks in the mid 1980s. Any German marks, anyone? They're all gone, right? Every currency trends towards zero. It can't possibly rise. The rise is a law. A fiat currency being strong is a fallacy. And it stems from not understanding that every time you print every time you print a new US dollar, digitally or otherwise, the value of all existing dollars drop. And how often are new dollars printed? Every second of your entire life. So if every new dollar drops the value of every other existing dollar, and dollars are printed by the trillions every 100 days. How is it possible for the US dollar to ever be strong? How is it possible for any currency in the past to be strong? It's impossible. You can't have a strong fiat currency. Now, what you can have is a relative strength relative to everyone else. But that's like saying, here's 200 airplanes in the air. They're all crashing to the ground, but this one's going to crash last. This one's going to crash before that one, but they're all crashing. Every fiat currency is crashing. The US dollar's not crashing to the ground as fast as the Venezuelan bolivar. The US dollar is not crashing to the ground as fast as the Argentinian peso or the Turkish lira or now the Japanese yen, but it's crashing to the ground. It can't go any other way. There is no up in a fiat currency ever because it's printed every second of your life. So this will never happen, Platinum Rift. And what a lot of people don't realize, and you especially with this question, is that Bitcoin has been designed to be the exact opposite of fiat currency. So every time there is a new dollar, Bitcoin's value increases. Every time they print more, Bitcoin's value rises. It's literally the mirror opposite. It's designed to be the mirror opposite. And this is why it's going to go up forever, because fiat currencies are going to go down forever. It's the best way to look at it is like a seesaw. You can't push one side of the seesaw down and the other side doesn't go up. Now think of one side going down forever and the other side going up forever. That's fiat currencies on one side, Bitcoin on the other side. It can't ever not go up, ever. Guys, when I'm saying ever, I'm not being facetious. I'm not exaggerating. It's going up forever. It's mathematically designed to do that, and no one can fuck with the math. So Platinum Rift says the US dollar index is going higher. This is ignorance about fiat currencies. No fiat currency can go up. The picture that's shown to you is that it's going up relative to everything going down. But it's just that they're one is crashing slower than the other, and the slower ones paint a picture of going up relative to the faster ones crashing, but they're all crashing. Just take a freaking look at the US dollar's history. Since 1913, the US dollar has lost 99% plus percent of its purchasing power. That is not going up. It's never gone up, ever. No fiat currency can ever go up. Stay close as long as you possibly can. You need some basic economic and finance related education here. And probably not just you, Platinum Rift. You've been duped to believe that currencies go up in value. They never can, ever. You can't print more of something and have the value go up. It's mathematically impossible. And you can't tell me that new dollars aren't printed every second of your life. Why else do you think a loaf of bread used to cost 5 cents and now it costs $5? What is there? Is the loaf of bread now all of a sudden the cure for freaking cancer? Have our processes gotten worse? Are we less efficient than we were 100 years ago? Are we more efficient? Has technology improved or has it gotten worse? So the cost should be less than 5 cents. It should not be $5. It should not go the other way. It goes the other way. It goes the other way because the purchasing power is collapsing, not the loaf of bread is more valuable. All right. Callan's asking, did I cover the privacy attacks on Phoenix, Samurai, Russia, and all? I actually want to do a special talk on that, but I will just touch upon what's happened recently. There has been the jailing of the founders of Samurai Wallet in recent days because of the mixing service that they had built into the Samurai Wallet. And this has kicked off a series of other providers of wallets to decide it's safer to just leave the United States, remove their apps from US based app stores and stuff like that, just because there's now regulatory uncertainty as to what the US potentially can deem as needing a money transmitter license and so forth and so on. Anyway, the thing that I want people to understand is that your Bitcoin is literally 12 to 24 words. And that wallets made by people have nothing to do with your Bitcoin. You can do away with all wallets, but if you have your 12 to 24 words, which really is, in a sense, your Bitcoin, then you're okay. If no one has access to that 12 to 24 words, then you're fine. Your Bitcoin's not in danger because some wallet decides that you can't use it anymore. Just plug the 12 to 24 words in a different wallet. People are getting this confused because the terminology is not quite accurate. We are trying, because Bitcoin is so unique, we're trying to take legacy terminology and apply it to something that is so far outside of the legacy system. I'm not saying that's necessarily bad, but it has its drawbacks. Like, there's no wallet in Bitcoin. You don't really have a wallet. You've got a secret. That secret is 12 to 24 words. There's no wallet. Satoshi Nakamoto never mentioned the word wallet. There's just Bitcoin. What's your Bitcoin? 12 to 24 words. It's a foreign concept to us that our word is our bond, that our word is our value. We used to say it in the old days. That man's word is gold. My word is my bond. My word means something. Well, now for real, it does. My word is my Bitcoin. My word is my wealth. My word is my value. As long as no one has access to that, your Bitcoin is absolutely safe. And you can plug it into any other open source. You want to make sure your wallet's, if you're going to use a wallet, it's open source. But you don't need a wallet if you secure those 12 words, those 12 to 24 words. A wallet's not needed. My name is Oliver Velez, and I am your 13%er Bitcoiner. Be safe out there, and until next time. Boom!